subject, I would say, for a lot of people, I could potentially make people feel a bit awkward, but I think Piero and I are probably the best people to be talking about the unpopular subject, which is how you build a healthy relationship, a beautiful relationship after a porn addiction recovery. And I think that we can't deny that it's a problem that our society is facing big time, especially with the younger generation having more and more easier access to it, instead of like 30 years ago and 40 years ago. And of course, this is going to be an increasing problem. And I think talking about those subjects to really understand how we can navigate through it is really important. So Pjero is a clinical therapist who focus in helping people to really achieve their, fulfilling life after an addiction recovery and many other things as well. Piero, I would love you to talk a little bit more about, the work that you do with people. But so I am really, really excited about this conversation because I really think it's a very important subject and not enough people are talking about it. And you know how that shows, like when I was putting the hashtags, I don't know which platform was it, but it doesn't even have I think it was the LinkedIn one. It didn't have like the porn addiction hashtag. And it's, like it is a reality of a lot of people, but, of course, it's not something that people are prepared to talk about.
Angelica, first of all, thank you so much once again for chatting with me live about this subject. It's the second time that we've shared a moment like this, but more importantly, I've taken more notice of what you do purely based on bringing these subjects to light, right? So it doesn't matter who you interview and who you share your moments with and you dance in conversation, but the whole idea is that you're bringing these conversations to light. So thank you for that. I appreciate your commitment to us and then obviously sharing it with your network as well. So we're live right now. So if you're if you're listening in and you're on my LinkedIn page or you're on Angelica's LinkedIn page, even this is live on my YouTube and Angelica's YouTube, like share this around because this is something that needs to be spoken about. It's no longer taboo. If people are going to identify themselves as its and things, and all respect to them, if we can't talk about adult pornography in a way of how damaging it can be to our relationships, but most importantly, how we can build, and in my language, we can build exceptional relationships after porn addiction or even during porn addiction. So, Angelica, I'm super, as you can tell, it's such a subject I love and I'm super pumped.
Yeah, awesome. So why don't you just start telling us a little bit about, what you see in some of your clients, potentially, I think, when somebody has a porn addiction, how, do they navigate through creating a beautiful relationship after recovering from it?
Okay, first of all, that's a huge question. Great question as well, right? But there's a lot of parts in that, and I want to break it down slowly. Firstly, I want to bring to light three things that I see in my clinical practice. Number one, the addiction actually proves to people in their brain that they want to keep it.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say that again.
Yeah.
The addiction proves to people why they want to keep it. Now, why would I say that? Majority of the clients that I've spoken to, whether they engage with me or not, they like the addiction because it's actually helping them get away from the pain that it's causing them. Mm-hmm. Now, all of the life coaches out there that are listening to this, that their brain's just going to bing and buzz like crazy because you want to get to the root cause. Listen to me. If you're a life coach, if you haven't understood what it's like to have over 2 decades of addiction, you will not understand how challenging it is to get to the root cause. So don't even go there. Stay in your lane and stick to what you know.
Yeah.
This is the problem with understanding how to get to the root cause. People get stuck in that. And it's not that they can't get out of it. It's that they have built such enjoyment and pleasure out of that, especially even if it's cocaine,
or alcohol,
even if it's alcohol or marijuana or gambling or sex and porn, because if you start to become a high functioning addict to those neurological habitual behaviors, you don't want to change that. So that's number one. Number two, people aren't aware of the payoffs versus the cost. They are not aware of how much it's actually costing them versus their payoffs, even if they're high functioning. They just don't get it. Everything around them will crumble fast, but they are just not aware of it, even if they think it's good for them.
Because the addiction is being kind of justified here, and they're still going to work and, you know, doing everything that they need to do and turning up to friends' party. And, you know, but there's no problem because I'm high functioning here. So it's okay. It's not really that bad, right? Like that really resonates with me because I do feel like I had a very unhealthy relationship with alcohol. And I can totally see that playing around before in my head was like, no, it's not too bad. You don't drink that much, you know, and everybody around you, you know, but everybody drinks the same. You know, this is not too bad, you know, like, you know, you just keep looking for the justification and you're completely, my health's crumbling away. Exactly what you said. I'm getting sicker and sicker by the day, but still willing to justify the need to numb my pain with alcohol.
And you just answered number three, which is the story you tell yourself. So number one, right? People have proven to themselves why the addiction is okay. Number two, they're not aware of the payoffs versus the cost. And then number three, it's the story they're telling them. They're the narrator of the story that they're narrating on a daily basis. So why this subject for us? Well, for myself, for 2.5 decades, I was working over here and everything had to be exceptional. Everything had to be great. Everything had to be top notch. I had to get the awards. I had to win the prizes. I had to be first or in the top 3. I had to prove myself all the time. That was the healthy mechanism for work and knowledge and study over here. And then in the background, when I wasn't getting the awards, when I wasn't good enough, when I was failing targets, over here was the unhealthy addiction to pornography and sex. And it was continuous. It was going on and on and on and on. And there would be times where I justified it to myself so much that it's just like, what's 2 minutes? Like, and we joke about that as guys, right? We joke about that as men. It's kind of like, what's 2 minutes, right? Whether it be a magazine back in, 20 something years ago, whether it be a magazine or because you didn't have it on your phone back then, or it was a VHS tape or a CD that you could sneak into your room. So, going back to your question, what is it that I see in people that it then brings them forward to how they can start to create a beautiful or an exceptional relationship after porn? The realization is acceptance. And we all understand that. Everybody understands that we've got to get to a level of acceptance. But here's the most challenging bit that I believe everybody purely doesn't understand, and that is conflict. Conflict is the only way, internal conflict is the only way to actually achieve self-awareness of what you do and you don't know. When you're in conflict, with conflict management and conflict per se resolution in old terminology, conflict is just an uncomfortable difference between two people. So the moment that the wife challenges the man or the man challenges the wife and says, like, what are you doing? Like, you masturbating on your own? And it's like, and then there's conflict because it's like an uncomfortable difference where the man's upset that she's doing it on her own, or the woman's upset that the man's doing it on their own, instead of embracing conversation. But that's because it's uncomfortable. So, as you know, Angelica, my biggest tagline is conquer the uncomfortable to unleash your potential. So, to carry on with the rest of the question, how people can do this is a level of awareness. They've got to be willing to be conflicted. And when they are, they get that level of acceptance and they go, I can see where I've let myself down.
Yeah.
And then I can see where I've let my partner down. And now we can at least talk about it and then put the emotions on the table in a safe space with a therapist?
Going back a little bit about building this relationship, let's say somebody who's had, especially nowadays, somebody who's had this porn addiction from their teens to their early 20s, and they're starting to think about, no, I really want to be with somebody for real, because I think a lot of this porn addiction these days come from this imaginary world, because it's so easy to be on your phone, and everything is so much more available than before. Like 30 years ago you could have had that, but you still needed to get out and communicate with people. Now you don't even need to do that, so you become like this teenager that isolate themselves and are watching porn all the time. 20 years old is still doing it. You've never had a girlfriend, and you've never had a long-term relationship, whatever. How do they, and of course I can imagine that there'll be a massive fear around, like, how can I have a girlfriend, and how I'm going to hide this from her, like how am I going to create a relationship, but I need to hide this from her, because, at that point, perhaps they're not even aware that they need to let that go.
Yeah, that's once again, really great question. When you talk about it from that perspective, we are able to see so much nakedness and attraction from a physical point of view more than ever in our life have we've ever experienced. And what I mean by that is, if we go back to when times were when, like prostitute houses were normal back in Greek and ancient times, even back to the times of Pompeii that was buried. When I went to visit, there were places that had the little pictures on the walls of different positions you could go to. And this is in Pompeii, like the when the ashes of the explosion happened and covered Pompeii. Right. Okay. So when I was there, these it was normal. But the thing is that back then, obviously, due to the study that I've done, you can only see a naked woman X amount so many times in like a 24-hour period, right?
Yeah.
And that's majority of what it was. Whether it was men in there as well, like there has been no story evidence that we know of where there was men in there as well, but purely there could have been. So when you compare that to now, even when you compare that to 10 years ago,
yes,
the amount of nakedness and physical naked attraction that we could see as human beings has multiplied by the millions in a 24-hour period.
Yeah.
So now just think about the neurological damage and or attachment, the attachment to the neurology of our brains and our physical attraction to another person in their nakedness has gone through the roof.
Yeah. So a lot of, I think women would have potentially an issue with that, in the sense of, like, women are fighting, to be the equality, to be, able to freedom and to do whatever they want. And they feel like they, want to do whatever they want, like online or offline, whatever, like, and I'm talking about like the way that you dress and the way that you, women don't want to be told, they're like, oh, you can't wear this and put a picture on the internet, like, and I am a woman myself, and I have put lots of pictures of myself in bikini pictures. And sometimes you do get an email of some sort of, like, I'm sorry to say like this, but a loser that just emails you going, hello, whatever, like it's a one strike. You just block that person and you don't have to see that person again. But I just feel like, and I think we talked this a little bit off camera, there is a physical difference between a man and a woman in the sense of, and I think that's, again, is going to be an unpopular opinion, and I'm quite happy to talk about that, because I come from a country where, women, back in Brazil 30 years ago, it was only magazines, there wasn't, still when I was there was no mobile phones, but and the women dress up like with very little clothes because it's always hot outside, and the men will be, saying things to you. But I grew up with this resilience of going like, well, if you don't like it, just tell them that you don't like it, and I'm not saying that every woman does that, but I'm quite happy to do that. but there is there was always a difference between how a woman, you know, like if I see a man walking along who is really hot, you know, physiologically I have a different reaction than a man seeing a really hot woman walking by, right?
So this is really interesting. There's a very, very good Islamic speaker, and the first thing that I can remember from watching his information and his YouTube is the one thing that you said there. You put 100 trans men on an island, and in in 1,000 years you're going to find 100 men, right? You put 100 women on an island and 100 men on an island, in 1,000 years you're going to find 100 women bodies and 100 male bodies. Like, we can't deny the biology.
Yeah.
Now, this also comes down to exactly what you're talking about, which is the physical attractiveness. You don't have to change per se your physical attributes and identify as anything else to be attracted internally to something else. Especially when I say something else, like another woman, a man being attracted to a woman or a woman being attracted to a man. You can walk past hundreds of men all wearing the same thing, but there will be one or two, or possibly, you know, like when we look at it from those statistics, I think for a woman, you put 10 men on in front of one woman, and I think the statistics are around about 20 to 25%. So they'll choose 2 or 2.5 men, whereas you put 10 women in front of one man, and the statistics are like 85 to 90%. They'll just choose everyone, right? So when it's like that in the context of building relationships, women will naturally look for the one that they see biologically in the future better for them. That's how they look for it. Yeah. A man just wants to plant the seed, which I know sounds so intense, but that the man has unlimited seed. The women don't.
Yeah.
She has the fertility, and I think this was from Brené Brown and maybe Mel Robbins, and I want to quote them purposefully because I study them and watch them as well. But they said, or the quote came down, I think it was Brené Brown, and she said that generationally, the women have as many eggs as they have passed down from their grandma's grandma. Mm-hmm. Right? So that means when the woman's born, she's only got X amount of eggs passed down hereditary, like generationally, which means the woman biologically would look at 100 men or 10 men, and she'll be like, I'm biologically looking for the one that is the fittest, the tallest, the strongest, the one that look like. You can't tell off intellect by looking at them, but you sure as hell can look at someone's intellect and then look at their body and be like, hang on a minute, if he's intellectually like this, he might be doing these things, right? Now, let's not try and be too stereotypical. I'll probably get some slack for that one, right?
Yeah. But yeah, like you said, you're looking for a physical and emotional and mental connection as a woman, which men are, you know, quite happy just to go for the physical connection, you know, and that's it, you know, like, and I think, you know, that, you know, of course, we probably are going to get a lot of bad, you know, comments around that. But I believe that this is, in essence, a very distinct physical difference between a man and a woman, which leads men to behave potentially in a way that will lead them to that path of, especially now, which is so easy, to being attached and addicted to the pornography that is out there.
Absolutely. So it's without doubt. And the thing is, what becomes acceptable becomes inevitable. So the fact that it's on the internet, the fact that they keep making more and more and more of them, the fact that a lot of the products that are even out there, and I don't want to get into like the depth of this part of it, but we have to outline it. And that is, multiples of products are actually designed in a way, not purposefully, but like the chemicals that are in them are slowing down the testosterone rate of men. So a man's testosterone after 21, from my physical education research and background, from 21, the male testosterone level starts to drop slowly for the rest of their life anyway. The only way that you can decrease the drop is by being more healthy or the healthier you are, the slower it will drop or decrease. So all of that aside, building better or exceptional relationships after porn really comes down to knowing what you and your partner want to experience for the rest of your life together.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah. So, when you think about, it could be a couple that, being together for a while, and it might be that, the husband, and again, it could, it could be the woman as well. One of them get addicted to the pornography while already in the relationship because, perhaps, there is no more intimacy, or perhaps, they are not connecting physically anymore. How do they build a different relationship from that place? Because, if the other person says, look, I don't think that what you're doing now is healthy. I don't think it's what I want for our relationship. It's how do you move forward from that place?
Okay, great question. There's a couple of things I want to outline first. Number one is, in a relationship, conflict is inevitable. So it's how you build or how you repair from conflict. Number two, you've got the 4 R's in a relationship. I don't want to talk or get into the 4 horsemen of the horsemen of apocalypse. I want to stick to the 4 R's, just so that there's a quick outline of where I'm going to take this conversation on how to build it moving forward. You've got the first step, which is resistance. There starts to be a level of resistance in conversation. In other words, if the person is feeling, now remember, this is about the person. This is not projected onto the other person yet. The person feels like they want to bring up a conversation with their partner. However, it starts to feel like it's resistance. It's like, if I bring this up, they're going to say this, they're going to say that. I know how they react. I don't want to bring it up, right? So then they suppress that resistance. Straight after that, you're going to get a level of resentment. So you move from resistance to resentment. You then start to resent things that they do. You continue to look for more evidence of, see, I don't even want to bring it up. I don't even care. They don't care, right? Then you get into a level of what we call rejection. This is now where you start to reject yourself and the other person based on all the evidence, based on the resentment you see, and based on the more resistance that builds up in the relationship. The next level is just regression. It's where you completely check out. You check out. During regression, you check out, which means you're no longer as emotionally attached as you once were. You are no longer intimately attached. You are no longer sexually, financially. You just start to withdraw, okay? The third thing I want to bring up, I always work in 3s. It's easier for the human brain to remember. The third thing I want to bring up, and it's got to do with the sexual, especially sexual attraction evidence we find, sexual attraction. Now, the third one's really important. What we do in a relationship when we're not feeling sexy, we look for intimacy to feel sexy. When we don't get the intimacy, we don't want to move to sex. In other words, the intimacy starts to move into a sexual feeling or a sensual feeling or an erotic feeling or even sometimes a kinky feeling, right? Or an energetic feeling. And then what happens is it eventuates into sex. However, majority of men, and I'm going to put this one on the men, majority of men, the masculine feeling don't understand how to be intimate. Sex doesn't equal intimacy. So I'm just going to put that out there. But then there's a lot of females, there's a lot of women who are very alpha that just, they don't know how to drop into their femininity and to be radiant and then to be intimate with the man. And here, let's get into this. So then how do you build these relationships? Okay. First of all, when you know those things, you know your 4 R's, you can see where your resistance is. You actually know what level you are. So if you turn around and say, I'm starting to reject you and us because I've found all this evidence, right? The next one is that what becomes acceptable becomes inevitable. So conflict is going to happen regardless. And if you don't repair from that conflict, example, if you don't repair from the conflict, it takes 5 positive interactions to outweigh 1 negative one.
I'm
So if
actually reading a book. It takes 8. I don't know which one is like. That's crazy.
Yeah. So if you multiply it, I just average it down like that. I think over 25, it's a certain number. You're right. It's getting up closer more to 8. And that's especially with technology and that moving forward.
Yeah.
So then you've got to understand that sex is not intimacy. Intimacy is completely different, right? Okay. So how do you then move forward and build on that? Well, when you know what level of resistance, resentment, rejection you are, let's say your rejection, you're starting to find the evidence, you're starting to reject the person, reject the other, reject them, reject yourself, even the way you look in the mirror and the way you feel about yourself. The next part is understanding, well, if you're not being intimate with yourself, so for a woman, if the woman doesn't feel sexy, if she doesn't feel radiant, if she doesn't get her nails done or she paints them, if she doesn't look at herself in the mirror and like look at herself in a way that's just like, I love who I am.
Yeah.
I feel great in my skin, regardless of how big she is. Like, just skip that for a moment, right? And then the next part is when you can work that out together, the first step that I get partners to do is talk about it. In a relationship program, that might be about 6, 7, 8 steps from the start. So the first step is just to recognize it, right? But this is at the 6th, 7th, 8th step. You're recognizing these places in yourself. Then we're talking maybe 15th, 16th step. So we're talking about the next step is where, and we talk about this in personal development, we talk about our identity. Like, who's your identity when there's nothing left? In other words, if everything was taken away from you, all your kids, your cars, your houses, everything was taken away from you, who are you standing in front of the mirror? The whole idea is to stand in front of each other, completely nude, and own the parts of yourself that you don't like and tell your partner so that they can embrace you and be like, I didn't even think twice about your love handles. I didn't like, it's the fact that you're with me, to be close with me, to be that like intimate with my skin. Like, I just love to feel you on me. I'm attracted by your strength. And he's like, I always thought I was weak. Like, all of these things where they get to stand in front of each other and own the parts of themselves that they don't like. Self-ownership, right? Or self-care, self-worth, understanding what.
And that's a work that you have to do it almost individually, right? Like, it's not, you're doing that, like I said, like before, like if you can't see for yourself that you are sexy, that you are, that you like, your own skin and your body, how are you going to be radiant and be, for somebody else? So this is the kind of work that you're kind of doing separately here so you can be better together, right?
Yep. And that's where, like, when the question, what does it look like to build better or exceptional relationships? That's what it looks like. They're the things that you need to start uncovering. They're the layers of the onion that you need to peel away so that you as an individual can get back to your heart space. Talk about heart space. What I mean by that is you as an individual need to get back to the fundamentals of who am I without anything? Without the kids, who am I? Without the car, without the bedroom, without this, without that, without the kitchen, without the cooking, without all the stress, without the money. Who are you? Stand there and just own it and own you. Because if you can't do that, the relationship is in a place of hurting. It's already hurting. Like, when I say resistance, that's what we call okay. Resentment is where you start to hurt. Resentment and rejection is where you start to hurt. And then you've got regression is when you're already existing. You're not even being. You're just existing. You're walking around the house. You're doing your duties each. I'm cutting the grass on the weekend. I'm gonna bake a cake. I'll take the kids to the park. Okay, and then you get home. One might turn on the TV, watching.
What do you think it's the most likely scenario to happen? Like, do people develop a porn addiction after they are married, or do you think they bring that porn addiction into the relationship?
If you ask me this question based on my own experience, if you asked me this prior my marriage, I would have said I would have brought it into it. Let's talk about this question because it's a really great question. Everyone that grew up in the 80s, the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s, early 90s, late 80s, especially, Playboy magazine and Penthouse magazine were on
Yeah.
the table. They were normal, but they advertised everything. They advertised Marlboro cigarettes. They advertised that bad boy, that bad girl look, a little bit of the rebel, a little bit of the jester. We're talking about the Carl Jung and the archetypes right now. Those people that went a little bit outside of themselves. Those kind of magazines were around. So pinup magazines, Playboy magazines were completely normal to have in men's lockers and women's lockers. Like, women had men in their lockers as well. It wasn't just all men, right?
Yeah.
So would I say that they've got this prior? Of course. I believe that there's a sense of prior to the relationship, and that's because my research and the clients that I've worked with is because our physical nature is to look for an intimate partner or look sexually for a physical partner. That's the first thing we start to look at. We notice someone physically first, then we interact with them. What I'm finding now, the technology is just a bonus. It's a bonus. So if you meet someone, whether there was porn prior or whether there was no porn, if you're in an intimate relationship now and you're as young as, say, 22, and like I've heard of people having sex and having babies at 14. So I can't even fathom this for myself. I was a late bloomer, started around 18. When I hear people in relationships that say 22, 25, and they've never touched pornography, it wouldn't start specifically at pornography. It probably starts from something as simple as Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, and they just start to get a physical attraction of someone on the other end of the screen. And they don't even have to be wearing anything skimpy. It's just you've got access to so many faces across the internet now compared to where we never had. So my answer definitely swings towards they bring it in prior to the relationship, versus after.
It could be that it becomes their thing as they're young, isn't it? And then it's the whole thing that we talked about in the last live show that we did, and I would highly recommend people have a look at it because it was really interesting. As we talked a lot more about habit, everything we do becomes a habit, and if it's a habit that we have done for so long, we always default to it unless we are constantly working towards changing that, especially if it has been an addiction. Let's say if you've been watching porn from 14 to 18 and you get in a relationship, you might stop doing that. But as soon as the relationship goes sour, you are going to go back to it because that's all you know, or not the all you know, but that's what makes you feel comfortable and happy, and makes you feel like safe, because that habit has created a feeling inside of you of when things don't go well, this is what I do, and it helps me, and it could be anything. It could be food, it could be cocaine, it could be alcohol, it could be marijuana, or everything, right? So but it's just that it's unfortunate, not unfortunate, it's just that happened that that first addiction that they developed was porn, and then as soon as they don't do it for a while, but if things go sour in any relationship, they go like, well, that's what I default to, right?
And this is really interesting, and that's a really great point that you raise. We all have this, what we call default behavior. The default behavior is just the mechanisms that we created as a child to run away from pain and towards pleasure. It's like, if I do this, I get in trouble. So I'm going to try not to do that again. So I'm going to do all of this, right? It's a default mechanism, which I really love talking about. But when we expand on exactly what you just said, it doesn't matter what the addiction is. If you come to the plate, if you're listening right now and you want to heal, you want to heal your relationship, you want to work on it, you want to better it with you and your partner, go home and tell the truth. Like, people might be sitting there just going like, oh my God, if I told the truth right now, like, I would lose everything. Well, that's the point. You shouldn't have done it in the first place. So maybe you need to set up a purposeful conversation where you can own the truth. But the fact that you've lied, and believe me, I'm the first person to put my hand up and own the amount of lies that I've told in my lifetime. And even recently, it's bad. but I own it. I own it now. I can't change my mistakes, but I have changed so I don't make the mistakes ever again. So if you're sitting there and you're just like, okay, well, then what's the best way for me to start? It's like, at least start with something.
Yeah.
Make a space where you can be vulnerable and talk about the things, because regardless, your reputation, the fear of being found out, unearth the truth behind the lies you've been telling yourself. All of these things that you need to open up and peel back the layers from, you are going to become such a more important, empowering, honest, loyal, trustworthy, respectful person in your life, in your environment, if you do that. And every single entrepreneur that we know of, that we look up to, is already talking about that. Being vulnerable, Brene Brown. Like, we could list the names all day long, but what are you doing about it? So,
I actually find this, you talked about Brene Brown and Mel Robbins, which I think they're super real, but I don't think a lot of men, the gurus, talk about owning their mistakes.
so
I would
this is
say
really,
that a lot of them just sit in this position of alpha. Oh yeah, like 30 years ago, I made a big mistake, and I no longer do that. Now my life is perfect, especially when it comes to relationships. Some of them have had like 4 marriages and they're giving relationship advice. And I would say that is, like Brené Brown and Mel Robbins, they've been married for over 20 years. They share their vulnerability around, their relationships. I can't think of a guru male that would own up to that at all, in actual fact.
I think that's really important, and I want to bring this up purposefully so that I can share it with the audience in a way of why I believe that I'm in an area to speak about exceptional relationships. And that is, I'm a single dad of 3 boys. I'm going through the divorce. This is an area of mine that I talk about because I know what I did that ruined it. I know what I did. I take responsibility of what I did to get me to here. So when I reflect back now and give other people confident general advice or personal advice if they wish for it, especially in the clinical therapy, if you don't know where you've come from and you don't take responsibility of how you got there, you can't move forward. You can't even explain it and share it with people, right? So I agree with you in the context of men who are out there that are not doing this. I will tell you ones that I look up to in this context, and that is Grant Cardone.
Yeah.
Because he made all these mistakes and now he's with Elena and now he's working on his relationship moving forward.
Yeah, I have heard him saying, like, we work on our relationship all the time. I have heard,
Yep. The next one would be Jay Shetty, purely because he talks about it with his partner, and they've opened up about their being together for 10 years, and they openly discuss the parts of their relationship. However, they don't have kids. This is another thing. This is another thing that I want to open up.
I'm sorry to say that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to say that. They don't know yet. Well,
they don't know yet, right? And this is,
no.
yes, this is exactly another thing that I want to open up to all the other coaches out there. And this is coming from a place of respect, honesty, and love and appreciation. But you can't speak on relationship challenges if you don't throw kids in there. And the more kids you've got, you've got to respect the ones that have got more than you, that have got better information or different information to share with you. I've got 3 boys, so I don't know what it's like to have a girl, but I'm coaching and I've got clientele that have got either 2 girls, 2 boys, so 4 children, some of them 4 girls, some of them 3 girls. And I listen to them with intent.
Yeah.
Because they've got something to teach me.
Yeah.
Regardless of my expertise in my areas. So I agree with you. I don't think there's very many men out there that have been in long-term relationship. Maybe
and I think what you said, like, I think there will be so many men sitting there if you think about your relationship, the one that you broke up. I always believe that a relationship, it is obviously you own to your mistakes, but it's a 2 people thing, right? Like you made your mistakes, but it's never a one person's fault, right? Like in any relationship, coach will talk about that, like it's, you have to take 50-50 kind of responsibility. And I think that is so, so important. But that means that, like you said, you need to own up to your mistakes. But there will be so many men out there that been married for 10, 15, 20 years, that they are going through a porn addiction, and they are thinking, like you just said, I can't own up to this. I can't talk to my wife about this. I can't say to her, I can't, and the crazy thing is, and again, we talked about this on our last podcast, people think that, it's easier for them to exist and be in that unhappy relationship rather than own to their mistakes and maybe live through the consequences. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to break up. They could repair it, but they believe that, like I was saying, the risk of like being vulnerable and saying, okay, well, I can't keep going on like this.
There's a huge risk to it if you bring it up.
Yeah.
There's a huge risk to bringing it up. And that's the most challenging part. And I talk about it like this: to say or not to say. If I say it, what's the worst possible case scenario that's going to happen if I say it? If I don't say it, how much more is this going to peel me away on the inside? So, like, I get it. I understand from
yes.
I understand from my clientele that some people would just choose to be like, I'm not saying anything.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't want to say anything. And it's like, okay, that's okay. As long as it's not detrimental to you and you do not, like, you're not drinking, you're not drunk, or you're not doing anything worse. Yeah. However, I can assure you it eats you away from the inside. Yeah. And the next part is, well, then if it's not me, go and find another therapist out there that can set up a mediation or a safe place where you can open up to your partner in a way that it's just like, I don't know how to stop. I need a safe place to talk about this. Maybe I need your help. Maybe I can't get it, whatever it may be, but at least you're going to put it out there. So I can see where the detriment to a relationship would be. And that's what I love helping couples with, because majority of the time the women come to me and they say something's wrong and I don't know what it is. And by the third or fourth session, they're writing a letter to their partner to say, like, I want you back and I don't know what's going on. And majority of the time, the men then join the counseling and the therapy sessions, and then the whole relationship rekindles. So it can happen.
Yeah.
But you've got to be in a one way, shape or form. You've got to be able to bring it up in such a way so then the person that you're living with.
Yes.
Because
I think what you said is important. Yeah. Like, I mean, if you keep going like that, and I see that from my own experience, it's going to eat away and make you sick at some point, because the body is, is not going to forget about all the stress that you're putting yourself under, the guilt, the shame, all of those feelings. You can live like that for so long, but I don't know if you can live like that forever.
So this is really interesting. See, when we open up to people and we tell the truth, we'll receive the truth. So when we open up and we tell the truth, we will receive the truth. So if the person doesn't want to be with you because of it, you need to realize what you've done. And I've been in that position, right?
Yeah.
So what do I really mean by that? If you don't become vulnerable about these things, or you try and hide it, you're essentially lying. And how many other areas of your life then are you lying in? Like, for what purpose? You won't get away with lying. You will not get away with it. No one gets away with it. Not even Lucifer himself got away with it. The moment that he disconnected from being one of God's angels, right? He just wanted to be the best of the worst. So he's not even lying about that. He's just like, I don't like it here, but I want to be the best of the worst. So then he became the best of the worst. Like, how is that not? How do people not recognize that even Lucifer himself wanted to be truthful? So when you think about lying in general, and I'm the biggest advocate for taking responsibility of what I've done, and that is when you own it to that level, how do you then build exceptional relationships. And this is what I want people to recognize. An exceptional relationship starts with trust. An exceptional relationship starts with a possibility.
Yes.
And then an exceptional relationship then starts with a connection. So when you think about the 3 pillars, and I talk about these in my relationship programs and my marriage and family therapy programs, a relationship has 3 pillars: trust, connection, and a possibility. Because the possibility is either it's going to start or it's not.
Yeah.
Like there's a possibility that it will or it won't. Connection is understanding what you want. What type of exceptional relationship do you want to experience? Like, what do you want to experience? If you turn around, and then before I jump down this, the third one then is obviously then trust. When you can trust a person, it means if you can trust yourself. And a lot of people get this confused. And here's what I've worked out through my study. Trust is the courage to know what to say or do when someone does something wrong by you. Nothing more, nothing less. Because if you trusted that person and they did something wrong, that level of trust is the courage to be able to say, you did that to me. I now need to work on that and never let that happen to me again. It's just trust. It's just courage.
Yeah.
It's the courage of knowing what to do. So exceptional relationships. If you're listening right now and you're in this situation, the question that I want you to ask yourself is, just go to your partner and just say to them, regardless of all our past, let's look forward, no matter what age. Let's look forward and then ask them, what does an exceptional relationship look like to you? And what do you want to experience with me for the rest of your life? Ask that question.
Many people I can imagine is going to be like,
they're going, first of all, I can guarantee that you're probably going to shit yourself. So if you're listening right now, that is one of the questions in my very first program. Like, that's the first step in my program. Both of you have to answer a set of questions. One of the question is, what's my definition of an exceptional relationship?
Yeah.
And what sort of things do I want to experience with you for the rest of my life? If you can't answer that with the person that you chose to have kids with,
that's the kid. That's the thing. The person you chose.
The person you chose.
Yeah, no, this is really interesting because I do have a lot of clients that come to me with a health problem. And when we, after one session, we go, okay, well, let's just do this with your physical habits. They instantly get a boost of energy. Instantly, a lot of their physical issues goes away. And then we realize the problem is their relationship are pulling them down, right? And then when we start talking about it, my question is always, okay, so just tell me, about your relationship. Like, why did you choose that person on the first place? What was it like when you first met them, And it's incredible, like how I'm yet to, know somebody who would be answering like with a spark in their eyes to go like, oh my God, he was really fun and he was really exciting and I loved him. And with, most of it is like, oh, we, kind of met and and I'm like, and he was quiet, but he was a good person. And, or she, she was, good. And I'm like, so basically from the beginning, from the get-go, just tell me one thing that kind of really, got you together. So there is nothing there. And they're building a family on a sand foundation.
And what's added on top of that, from a psychological point of view, is the whole idea of cognitive distortion. Like, I don't even want to bring that up in such context. However, as an individual, when you come to a relationship, you have so much cognitive distortion going on of what meanings you're giving to the world and all of that. There's 15 different cognitive distortions that are set out in stone. And if you've got any of those running at any one given time, you're going to put the wrong meaning on your relationship.
Yeah.
You're not going there to meet the person. You're going there to meet the feeling you want from it. How can you do that to another human being? Like, go there to give. You go to a relationship to give something. You don't go to get something. You give to that person. You give your all. You give yourself in. Now, if you're listening, once again, I'm just going to reiterate, I made the mistakes. That's why I can say it with such an open heart. I made the mistakes. I know what it's like now on the other end. I ruined it for me. But now I'm making the changes so that I don't do them again. And this is the thing. You might be sitting there right now just going like, oh my God, this is such a great conversation. However, how can I bring this up with my partner? It's kind of like, reach out to me or Angelica or another therapist or even another relationship coach out there that you've done research on, by the way, and ask for help. If you want an exceptional relationship, if you want to build a better relationship, especially if you're sneaking the porn right now, and you probably are, so don't try and like, don't try and get away with it. If you're sneaking it now, just make it an open conversation and use it wisely. And this is something that I want to make it contextual, but I want to make it funny. And this is what it is, right? There's that old saying, don't ride a horse, ride your partner. Go and enjoy your partner. Go and enjoy your partner. Whatever part of that you see fit, go and approach them and say, you know, relive why you want to connect with them. Relive your connection with them. Talk about the intimate stuff. Talk about your physical, emotional, mental, financial attraction to them. Talk about their intellect. There are people that are sapiophiles that are just purely driven by educational intellect. If you're one of them and you're driven by that with your partner, go for it. You know, so I'm just going to give a quick tick box here for people listening in the audience about how to build exceptional relationships after a porn addiction. Know your love language. When you know your love language, you know what to ask for, not what to give. You have to know your love language so you know what to ask for. So if a person that loves physical touch and quality time, then ask for physical touch and quality time. Don't give it, ask for it.
I think women are very good at like expecting the men to be mind reading, right? Like, well, why is he not doing that? Well, have you asked?
Yeah, ask.
They don't mind read, you know?
That's right. Men can't mind read. Just tell them. Even if you're a woman out there listening right now and you want your man to come towards you, give him the first initiation. Sit on his lap while he's watching TV and put yourself on him in a way that he's just like, oh, that's what you want. Because we're a bit dumb like that. And I'm being honest, right? Okay. The next one is there's also sex languages. There are different ways that people get turned on. We call it an emotional brake or an emotional accelerator. Basically, a man can walk around majority of the day and he can just get random reactions to horny situations, right? So men can walk around and the attraction's there. Not a lot of women can do that, but a majority of women, like there's a majority that can, and they're just like reactional as well. You have to know what your sex language is too. And if you want to know about that, reach out to me. You also then have to know like your needs and wants.
Yeah.
You have to know what you want and what you need. And that's on all aspects. I need this amount of like space. I need this. I'm going to frame it like this. Remember, boundaries are for you. They're not for the other people. This is the same as love languages. Your boundary is for you. That person helps you with your boundary. You have to put the boundary in for yourself. Not force the boundary onto other people. You put the boundary on yourself, and then you get your partner to help you with it. It's like, I need your help not eating too much chocolate and drinking too much wine. Great. That's your boundary. I'll help you stick to your boundary.
Yeah.
And people get this wrong. They think that I need to put a boundary. Don't spend time with, you can't come and hang out with me. It's like, no, you don't put boundaries on other people. You put boundaries on yourself.
Yeah. I think what they say as well is like, well, it's really hard because my husband wants to drink the wine and eat the chocolate. If he only changed that, then I would change. You know, then it would be easier for me.
If then syndrome. if this,
It's
then
like,
that.
so you're basically putting your health and life in the hands of somebody else.
Yeah.
So they change, so you can change. And then the second question comes, but why do I have to do it?
Yeah. Why do I have to change? It's very, very obvious when you see and hear someone and you watch and you observe their actions. So when you listen to their language and it's like, he does this, he does that, he does this. And it's kind of like, wow, he does a lot. That's interesting that you can give me the life book on him, but who's going to give me the life book on you?
Yeah.
And if I got him in here and he told me all of this stuff, I wonder what you're going to say to him. And this is so common. This is so common, and it needs to change. So if you're listening right now, we're not trying to make you wrong. We're not trying to make anybody wrong. What needs to change so that you can have and build a better and exceptional relationship after pornography? Because pornography can be damaging. So let's just really touch on this. See, this is called the monkey grip, right? Let's just talk about this monkey grip, right? When a man plays with himself to that extent, he can monkey grip so tight that doesn't reflect a woman's vagina. Like the vagina is supposed to open and lubricate, right? So the whole idea behind sexual intercourse is actually the more excited a woman gets, the vagina, the pathway opens more and it lubricates more. And sometimes it feels like there's less friction, but that's actually because it's the other way. She's actually quite horny, right?
Yeah.
So why is this a problem? Because when a man uses his monkey grip, right, he is actually forcing a feeling on his penis that he cannot replicate with a woman.
Yeah.
So therefore, a man is going to be more impotent when he goes to have it after a longer period of time of self-gratification and porn. So this is another reason, let alone all the fantasies and the neurological addictions that we create, or neurological habits and behaviors that we create while watching it, because now we're fantasizing about that person's head, that person's looks, that person's hair, that person's body, that person's breasts, legs, you name it. We're now attaching that to the orgasm that we get. And there's a name for it. Basically, when we orgasm, there's an oxytocin release. Now, women have it a lot more than men, but when a man has that oxytocin release at the end, it's with pornography, which is on your phone, or it's a magazine, or it's a video, whatever it may be, and then it's with your own monkey grip. It doesn't work. If you're listening, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Just own it. Like, you need to go on a recovery. You need to go
and
on
I was
a
going
recovery.
to say, and I think that's what you're explaining there. It's a bigger problem than we think. Like, I think in our last chat, you were talking about pornography. It hasn't been classified as an addiction, as a neurological addiction, as such. But what you're explaining there is the same thing as a drug addict, right? Like, you can never experience the world in the same way as you experience when you're on heroin or when you're on cocaine.
Correct.
So there is, because the world is not like that. So basically, sex is not like the pornography, a way of doing things, right? And it's something that we are already talking to our son, who is 11, about it. Like, to say, like, look, we are aware that you might be exposed to things like that, but that is not the reality of it, right? But what are you saying that is so important, because you get neurologically wired, addicted to that, the feeling and the emotions and the chemicals that are being released to your body, and you need to, there is a withdrawing process.
I'm glad that you brought that up, because it hasn't been proven that it's an addiction.
Yeah.
Okay. However, I'm going to form it this way. I'm going to frame it this way. And that is, it's a set of habitual behaviors that create such strong synaptic connections in the brain that create a false reality.
Yeah.
So I believe that an addiction is an uncontrollable obsession to either give or get attention from something or someone. So however the world is going to evolve into, whether the addiction word changes or we just start using the word obsession or uncontrollable obsession, it's a set of habits that we have created through pain and pleasure, we're moving away from pain and towards pleasure. And all we've done is created a set of habitual habits, just like in the book Atomic Habits, where it's a cue, it's a craving, it's a reward, then it's a result. And you're doing the same thing over and over and over. Yes, it's a cycle. And I call that a sabotage cycle. So if we're going to frame it now that way, it's basically a habitual habit that is an unhealthy one.
Yeah.
And now it's become a sabotage cycle to the pain that you're running away from. However you want to frame it, still sounds the same to me. One is just using a substance which then abuses the brain and the body in some way.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I think this conversation, we can actually go on. So we just had a comment coming here, like, this topic is so liberating, all true and authentic. Couples across the world needs to hear this. Wow, congratulations, Pjero and Angelica. LinkedIn, people are conservative yet open-minded at the same time. Yeah, I think that's yeah, I think we might need to have another conversation, Pjero. We're gonna forever.
Yeah, we can have these. We can have these
because
all the time.
We're at the hour mark, and I know that just don't want to go much further because I want people to watch this and take what serves them. I think this is very important. You are in a perfect position to help people with that, because I really believe that when you go through something, there is a lot of information out there from people that haven't gone through something, and I think that's so important that you can speak from your own experience, because you know what it takes, to move from that place of being addicted to something to the point and moving on to building different habits, physically, emotionally, and mentally. And I think that is very, very powerful. And I think so many relationships are being damaged, when you see how families are being raised, on the back of that, like I said, you cannot run away of it. You might run away, your relationship, you might be masking, but, your kids might find out when they're grown up. Like you can't keep that lie going. You cannot keep that lie going. You might think that you can, but at some point you're gonna have to say the truth. So reach out to Pjero if you are in that place. If you want to really go from a place of uncomfortable and meet your uncomfortable self to conquering your true self and connect to who you really are. You don't have to stay in that suffering. I think that's I know it's challenging, from my own experience with different things. I know how challenging it is to change, but staying on that path, it's surely more painful, absolutely 100% more painful. That once you start changing slowly, you can create something so much better for yourself. So, Pjero, I will add your links so people can reach out to you, and yeah. So, any final sayings?
I think the final saying for me is thank you so much for your time and your commitment to really opening the doors on such a big problem in the world, especially for, your son's 11, my son's 10 and a half, so he's going to be 11 soon. If you're afraid, it means you've got to lean into that. So if you're listening right now, the fact that you're afraid and the fact that you're scared to own even just a part of you, lean into that. I know for a fact that I create spaces where it's okay to talk about what's not okay.
Yeah.
So if you're listening and you're just like, I think I need to talk to somebody, then reach out. There is nothing more liberating than understanding how you as an individual can evolve purely by owning something that you've been hiding from the world for so long. So thanks for your time, Angelica. I really appreciate these conversations. They're great. And, you can find me on social media. I'm sure we're going to tag that, or you're probably watching one of the live platforms right now. So thank you once again. It's an honor and a privilege.
Take care. Thank you so much, Pjero.